Alright guys, a little bit of a different video today. It seems that the old BMW was having a little bit of trouble this week. Started it up, haven't driven it for a while, and it wasn't running very good, so it was misfiring. Hooked my little computer up to it, and it says misfiring cylinder 1 right here. So here's kind of a weird problem because my first suspicion was a coil pack, so I went out. It was at work, had to drive home, and so I got a ride to a local auto parts store, bought a coil pack, and figured, that's basically, it sounds like a coil pack was going out, because it was kind of intermittent, kind of on and off, and then it just died and not working very good. So I found a kind of an aftermarket coil pack, whatever they had in stock, popped it in there, no change. And so I'm going, oh man, that's not good. So I thought for sure that's what it was. So I proceeded to kind of listen to some stuff. I was listening to the injectors, and I was hearing, it's just one of these things that kind of snowballed. So, but I'll kind of tell you how it worked. And so I started listening to the injectors with a screwdriver, and I could hear all of them clicking. It seemed to be that the number 1 cylinder wasn't really clicking. I could hear some stuff. Pulled the injectors out. As you can see, all this wiring. This is normally in a plastic housing, which I'm going to put back together here pretty soon. So I had to pull this wiring loom, this wiring harness out, and sort of take everything apart so I could test each wiring, to see if I'm getting power to the injectors. And so I sent the injectors out because I thought, number 1 maybe was, the pack was replaced now. So I went over here and I sent the injectors out to get cleaned. And turns out that they were fine, but they were a little bit kind of borderline anyway. So they cleaned them all out, ultrasonic cleaned them, and then the flow apparently improved on all of them, and they're all very even, and they're still OEM, and they're fine. So ended up getting those cleaned and turned it on, no change, still misfiring, cylinder 1 only. So, okay, all right, so I kind of stopped. I'm like, man, is this going to be a computer issue? So I'm over here looking at the ECU. I'm kind of looking at the wiring going into that, as there's checking fuses and stuff like that to see if nothing came unplugged. But it still is only looking at cylinder 1, which is not, it doesn't seem to be a lean code. So I'm like, what, I can't figure this out. So I got, what did I pick up the other day? I picked up a Noid light, engine test light, right? So I said, well, I don't think there's a signal, but I'm going to go ahead and check it anyways. I checked. These are negative. These are ground actuated, so the positive side should always be on when the ignition's on. So I checked that on all of them. They're fine. Had 12 volt positive through the whole system, so I knew the system was getting powered. I did not know if the ECU was switching the number 1 cylinder. So that was my big concern. If it's not switching it, then that would mean that I have a break in that wire, which that wiring harness is like all over this engine. It's a $500 part. All right, so before I did that, I was like, well, I'm going to get this little test light and see if there's even power. And to my surprise, there was power getting to the number 1 injector. It was flashing. I checked a couple of more of them, and they were all flashing the exact same way based on idle speed. It was easy to see. So now I knew I'm getting signal. So what the heck's going on here? So I'm still misfiring cylinder number 1. I know I have fuel to the injectors. I know those are clean. I know the injector is getting signal now, and it's opening and closing, apparently. I was still getting a nasty misfire, and this thing was not running good at all. So, all right. So my next phase is, all right, so now I know I have fuel. I know I have electronics fuel on this side of the engine. Seems to be okay. Everything seems to be in order there. And what I ended up doing was picking up this little gadget here for $10 over at the local auto parts store. You can get these on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. And what this does is it's an ignition tester. It doesn't test the spark of the spark plug, but it tests the ignition of a coil pack. And I'll show you how that kind of looks right now. Okay, so really simple. You just plug this in. This is the stock. It's an OEM coil pack. And you just plug this in, and then you set your gap. Well, you set the power reading. So I put it on about 20,000 volts, And so what you can do is just by turning this, you can check your how strong your coil, because they might be going out, and you know, if it's really weak, you're not going to get any spark to your spark plug. So you can kind of check your power reading. I started at about 20 here. I think this is 20,000, just to see if I got anything. And then with the other end here, of course, you just find a nice ground and you clip it on there. Pretty simple. All right, so I plug this in. So I take the number one coil pack out because I had replaced the, I just figured I put back in my stock ones. And, you know, and every now and then it would work. It would drive. It would warm up, and then it would kind of start working again. You know, the car would run smooth. So it was kind of an intermittent thing for a while until I got it home, and it just really just failed. So I took out the coil pack just to see if it worked. I plugged it in, no spark. I'm getting nothing on the number one cylinder coil pack. So I'm like, okay, that's not good. So that's failed. And then what I did is I plugged in the new coil pack that I had bought from the auto parts store, the, who knows, the Chinese made one that, you know, that was real expensive, that they had in stock, right? That in an emergency, in a pinch, right? They charge you a lot of money for it. So pulled that out just to confirm. You know, I actually had that in the car, and I plugged that in, no spark. So I'm thinking, okay, that's not good. Now do I have a problem with my harness on this side? Okay, so just to confirm, I pulled out the number two cylinder, which I know is working. I know that coil pack is working. I plug that in, I get spark. I'm like, okay, now the wiring harness is fine. So what do we have? The problem was, and this cost me a lot of time and money, so you always have to double check. This is the lesson learned here. Just because you buy something from the auto parts store, there's a pretty good chance that it's not going to work or work correctly. So after, what I did is I pulled out the auto part, the new coil pack, and I sort of plugged it in and like jockeyed this thing in really tight, you know, because these don't have anything to hold them down. They just float on top. You can't screw them down and get it really tight. So I sort of like turned it a little bit and turned the harness a little bit, and all of a sudden I turn it on and I get spark, intermittent spark. So now it's kind of like on and off. So I know that the new one that I got is sort of, let me show you that. I think that's in number 2 here. I'll show you. And I think it's the new Bosch design that they have, but it's obviously not a Bosch. You can tell it's different. And when you look down inside here, the contact point is way higher than the spark plug. Okay, so it's not making really very good contact, in my opinion, with the spark plug. The other problem is this plug connector is much bigger and it's real loose with my harness. So, you know, when I put a good stock coil pack in number 1 cylinder, it worked fine. And then the misfire, actually, when I start moving it around, I moved this around a little bit and I was getting misfire in this cylinder. So the point is that just because you get something new from one of these garbage hack job auto parts store doesn't mean that it's going to work the first time. I just assumed that it was good. That was a bad assumption. So I'm guessing it's just because it's cheap and who knows, and it just feels a little different, looks a little different, doesn't go on there quite as good. I'm sure it's a direct replacement in their mind, but yeah, I couldn't get it. I can't get this really to work reliably, so I'm gonna have to bring it back. All right, guys, so I ended up getting this car back together, and I got a little bit of, I discovered something else actually in this whole process, and this might help you guys if you're having a misfire and you've bought some of these aftermarket parts or whatever, you know, like a coil pack or something you find at a store. There are some differences, and I think I narrowed down what was actually happening. All right, so what I found with the coil pack situation is that on a stock coil pack, this is stock, this is the aftermarket one that I bought. Here's what happened. So watch what happens when you have a stock BMW coil pack. You flip up on this lever, you pull it out, plug comes out, super easy, quick release, about as easy as you can get. Now watch what happens when you put it in. This is the key right here. You have to kind of put it on there, push it in a little bit, and then watch really close. Push down, it locks it all the way in. Now what happened with this aftermarket one, I threw it in there, didn't really think about it. I was on the side of the road, you know, at work, like, okay, I'll just see if I can get this to work. It comes out like normal, whatever. But let's say, so I'll take this out, I'll demonstrate here. You have your plug right here. You plug it in, just like the other ones. It catches it, cool. You put it on, cool. Now, there's a problem. You can see right here real easily, there's not a gap here and there's a gap here. So this lever or whatever, they did not design this correctly. It looks the same, but it doesn't have the same I don't know, doesn't have the same teeth or whatever because it's not pulling that in. So I put it on there, boom, I thought, hey, I still have a misfire. That's not good. So I'm looking at injectors and all sorts of stuff. Whereas what was happening was my first assumption was correct, that the coil pack was gone. But this aftermarket one cost me a lot of time and money because this is what happened. If you lift this up, what you have to do is push this on physically. You see that? Now it's tight. Now this thing's just flopping around in there. So what do you guys think I should do? I mean, technically this plug over time could work its way and vibrate loose. And I wonder how many people out there, because I read these comments on Amazon, oh, I got these aftermarket coil packs for my E46 and a couple months later they failed. I'd be willing to bet that a lot of these are made improperly to where they don't pull and hold those plugs on there. My guess is that they made these match up with, several different plugs from like a Mini Cooper and maybe some of the other different models of BMWs. They use a similar pack, and they probably just made them like really generic. So the problem is, this could over time work its way out, and I wouldn't even know it. I just have another misfire code. So I don't really know what I'm going to do with that coil pack. What do you guys think I should do? Leave comments in the comments section. What do you think I should do? If I should bring that back or just keep it as a spare? I'm almost leaning towards maybe a spare. I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, it doesn't really work right. So I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll order one on Amazon and just to see what it would do. I don't really know, because I can get actual genuine Bosch ones on Amazon for half the price of that. That was $60, and it doesn't even work. It doesn't work right. So guys, just keep that in mind. I've read a lot of comments on there, on the reviews on some of these aftermarket coil packs, and people are having problems. I think that might be one of the problems, and that can make your life kind of miserable for a while, because then all of a sudden you start wandering and thinking it's computers and injectors and like open wires and ECUs and all that kind of stuff. That gets expensive, and I know people have replaced those things thinking that something was going on. Could people think maybe faulty spark plugs or that type of stuff. So simple solution, but man, the reality is that can vibrate loose, and I could have a misfire on cylinder number 2 at some point. So, and everything else is back together. Everything looks good under the hood. Yeah, that's about it, guys. So I'll see you in the next one.